QT Marshall, everybody's favorite AEW superstar, back in AEW, back in his old role again, and back out doing the interview circuit. And he sat down this week with old Bill Apter doing an interview for Sportskeeda on their YouTube channel. Bill Apter, of course, the OG, the writer of the Apter mags that we all grew up on. And he had a good little interview with QT, and he got into a lot of the questions that we've all kind of been wondering about QT, why leaving AEW, coming back, that sort of thing. But one of the fun topics that they got into was talking about good old Phil Brooks, right? Our friend CM Punk. And QT didn't really hold back because, remember, we had heard some rumor that Punk didn't want QT on the show or didn't want him in a certain role or whatever for Collision. And maybe there were some disagreements there. And then obviously old Phil Brooks ended up leaving AEW. Well, QT was there. He was there. He had a front row seat for the incidents. And, obviously he has some insights into why he wasn't welcomed on Collision. Check out this clip.
I always liked him, backstage. I mean, I know there were reports that he kept me off the TV, and we actually talked about it, and we agreed. Neither of us wanted me to be Will Hobbs' manager. You know what I mean? So then I also had to work Saturdays and Wednesdays. So when him and I spoke about the idea that he didn't want me with Will Hobbs, I was like, yeah, let's sign me up for that one because I'd rather only work on Wednesdays. So, but I didn't think it was going to be out of the realm that he would go back, because the WWE had so many people that have done negative stuff and then come back. And I don't think he really did anything negative. He just walked away. That was it, right?
Yeah.
He didn't do anything crazy. Yeah, he did his interview that they had a lawsuit about. But other than that,
was all that stuff backstage in England and other places with CM Punk, was that blown out of proportion on the internet?
I mean,
because my God, every site just, oh my goodness.
I mean, ideally, him and Jack, whatever, they got into a little argument. I don't think it was anything. I don't know the other part, which is what Tony had mentioned on TV. I wasn't there for that, but ideally, there's a lot of people that people don't like at work. You know what I mean? I've worked at numerous places. I worked at, we always joke about the fact that I worked at Planet Hollywood when I was in Orlando. I worked there for 7-8 years. I disliked about 90% of those people. The difference is they never knew because I tried to be as professional as possible. And that's just the job, right? So, but things are going to happen and, people get all worked up and so on and so forth. But, it is a different time. I've always been the type that, hey, if there's going to be an issue, hey, we could talk about it like men and we could bring another person, when I spoke to Punk, I said, hey, I'm going to bring someone with me. We're going to go to his locker room. We're going to speak because I wanted to know from him, hey, this is what I heard. And I don't want to believe this. I'd rather believe what comes out of your mouth. And that's it.
So as Conrad Thompson would say, there's a lot to unpack there, right? Starting with the fact that QT didn't want to be there on Collision. He was perfectly happy just working Dynamite because that's less work for him. And he didn't want to be the manager for Will Hobbs, which everybody thought was a horrible thing for both Hobbs and QT. It didn't help QT and it didn't make sense for Hobbs. It held Hobbs back. QT didn't want anything to do with that. So if it wasn't coming from Punk and it wasn't coming from QT, obviously, it was the brainchild of Tony Khan, we could probably deduce, right? Another brilliant creative idea from Mr. Khan. Let's fucking put QT Marshall with Will Hobbs. Will Hobbs, Ricky Starks, two guys that I thought were clearly going to be their breakout stars or two of their breakout stars. They should already be dabbling in the main event at this point. Both of them could care less right now. And it's so fucking sad. It's not their fault. It's the booking. It's the terrible booking. That's a completely separate sidebar there. QT said he got along with Punk and said he had that front row seat in London for the action. He's like, they get into a little bit of a scuffle. He wasn't there for the Tony Khan incident that Tony seems to be scared for his life at. But QT's seen it all. He's done it all. He's always kind of been Tony's right-hand man there in the company. And seems like he's got a pretty strong head on his shoulders. I like QT. I've always liked QT. QT got over with me on Sammy Guevara's vlog. He would do a lot of... He worked a whole angle with Fuego del Sol, which I also loved Fuego from Sammy's. This was before Sammy's vlog turned into his little fucking him and Tay show. Him and Ty Conti, Ty Mello, whatever the fuck her name is. Before that, it was just, Sammy and the vlog crew, his homies and shit, right? They are always getting up to something, and that was, QT and Fuego del Sol had a little thing going on there. And I thought QT cut a hell of a promos. He's a very good heel. I think he's underrated, and I think it never translated over when I would see him in Dynamite and shit. Even when he was cutting promos, even when he was whatever he was doing, I wasn't seeing the same QT Marshall that I saw on Sammy's pod. I think QT's great. I think he's got a great mind for the business. I'm glad that he's back in AEW. Hopefully he can help them out a little bit, keep them organized. I would say AEW, I don't know that he was huge, a huge boost for AEW, but I think AEW certainly was not better without him. So he's got that going for him, and man, who's booking this weird shit with Hobbs? Like to hear QT talk about, well, I didn't want to do that either. Like, who's booking this shit? And it also raises questions about Punk too, right? A lot to unpack here, as I said. Punk didn't want QT on Collision. Punk didn't want QT managing Will Hobbs. Who died and made Punk king, god, emperor of AEW, Booker Man? It goes again to the 2 contracts. He had 2 contracts. What was the other one? It was an EVP contract. It was an EVP contract without publicly saying he's an EVP, because that would have been stupid. Probably similar to the same thing Jericho has, though I don't think Jericho has. But I mean, clearly Punk had creative control of everything, not just himself. Clearly, Collision was his show. He took complete control of that. For him to have authority over QT, who is Tony Khan's right-hand man, Tony had to have basically handed Punk the keys to the fucking castle at that point. Please, Mr. Punk, stay in AEW. Here's your whole own entire show. Do whatever you like. That's probably what happened. Oh, man. But it's fun seeing QT pop back up, and I like that he's not holding back, He's didn't play politics. He didn't hide anything. He was very open about the whole situation. I didn't like this. Here's how it went down. I always liked Punk. And, look, him and fucking Jungle Boy got into a little scuffle. It's whatever. It wasn't a big deal. Didn't see the Tony Khan one. I think we should all be more friendly towards QT. It's a lot of hate, a lot of heat online. I think he's a good dude, and I think he's far more talented than anybody gives him credit for. And part of that's on him, too. Maybe something's not, when he's on national TV, why he can't put out the same presentation that he can on Sammy's fucking vlog. I don't get, do you freeze up because more people are watching? Does somebody else's dirty paws in it so you can't fully be yourself? I don't know, man. But the dude can talk. He can talk his ass off, and he's a little heat magnet. He'd be a great manager, actually. Just not for Will Hobbs. Didn't make sense, and Hobbs doesn't need to be held down with that kind of shit. But QT could help out a lot of guys that can't talk, that are they're coming on up, right? You don't want to stick QT with any main eventers or even mid-carders that have the potential to break out. But lower card guys that need a little help, I think QT would be great for that. He's a good talker. But I do recommend checking out this interview, hear more from the good old QT. And if nothing else, just give QT a second chance. Would you quit being such a hater?
Oh yeah, thanks for checking out the video. Yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like it if you liked it. Yeah, And you can check out full episodes each and every Sunday right here on the channel. Ooh yeah. Dig it?